All right, welcome to Metal Up Your Podcast, episode 455. Today we are doing the Year in the Life of Metallica series. I haven't done this in years, but we started this series a long time ago where we're going to go through every year of the band's catalog in excruciating detail so that you could even pull up all of the active years of the band and hear everything they did. We stopped at 2012, so that's what we're going to focus on today's episode. I'll read a listener email here in a minute where they asked me to revisit this series. And it's a great idea because there's so many things that happen in the band's life, even in a year where no major record came out, no major tour happened, like 2012, where, some of the most interesting things did happen in the band. Okay, so 2012, we do have the 20th anniversary of the Black Album where they went to Europe and played festivals, but we also have a residency in Mexico City where they were preparing for the Through the Never stuff. But then we also have the Orion Festival, which is really what we're going to talk about today, is the Orion 2012 Festival, the first one in New Jersey. What was cool about it, why it worked, why it failed. And then also another really interesting thing happened in 2012 that we're going to get into later where that really set Metallica up to sort of be the arbiters of their own creative destiny, so getting their masters back from Warner. So we're going to dive into all that. It's going to be a great episode. I'm also going to watch the Ride the Lightning set where they debuted Escape for the first time. That will be available on Patreon. Thanks to everyone who's going and checking out the YouTube and liking and subscribing. Got 1,000+ subs in 2.5 months, which is pretty cool. And I'm going to be doing a YouTube live stream this week. I'll put it on all the socials whenever I do it. To just sort of celebrate 1,000 subs, come hang with me. We'll talk Metallica for an hour. I might even have the guitar up and running, jam on some riffs. Thanks to everyone who's been supportive over there. Oh, I wanted to say another cool thing that's going to happen on this episode is my buddy Drew Holcomb's going to come on. Drew Holcomb is a singer-songwriter based in Nashville that I've been friends with, I think, for about 20 years. He started a festival called the Moon River Festival. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. It started in Memphis. It's in Chattanooga now. And he's been running this festival for 12 years. So he's going to come on and give us some really great insight into what it takes to put a festival on, how you make money, what it costs, and just sort of illuminate for us what might have been difficult for Metallica to put this on and why it ultimately failed. We're going to talk all about the band's response to it moving to Detroit, them taking the break in 2014, and then obviously it never coming back because it was costing them millions of dollars. So look forward to hearing from my buddy Drew Holcomb. I do want to thank patrons, and then we're going to read some emails. So let's thank the patrons real quick. Got a bunch of new patrons. Look at all these beautiful people. Okay, going to say thank you to Kyle, Diesel83, Bobby Anand, longtime friend of the show, Kenneth Anderson, John Robinson, Dave Malakowdy, Charles Baker, Matthew S., Ivan Cardenas, Alexander Minev, Joao Victor, Mendagas Raleigh, Carlos L., Jordan Brown, Joshua, David N., Ziga Mudrika, Ryan, Ricochets, Micah Connolly, Joshua Southwick, Martin Tregarth, Slotback72, Joe, Nate, Owanby, Cleveland Rains, and Sirius Roger. Give yourselves a round of applause. That's for you guys. I have a studio audience here in Nashville, Tennessee in my studio. A lot of new patrons, a lot of people being very cool. I appreciate it. I got a lot of new listeners from a series I did, a video I made on YouTube called The Best and Worst Songs from Every Metallica Record. A bunch of fun discourse over there. And and also the re-edits of Hardwire, the re-edits of 72 Seasons. You can get all that through Patreon. Most of it's free over there, but there's like a free tier that you can sign up on. So go over there, check it out, get involved with what's going on. After I do the 1,000 subs live stream, I'm going to be doing Patreon-only live streams, probably once a week. So, and there's more stuff coming. There's the Saint Anger material. I'm going to do Death Magnetic. I'm going to do Beyond Magnetic, another AMA with my wife. I think all the future radio episodes where I play 10 of kind of my favorite songs and talk about them will be over at the Patreon. So go check it out. Go support the show. You've heard it a million times. What else can I say? Let's check in with the community. It's metalupyourpodcastshow@gmail.com. I read them all, and I read most of them on the show. So let's go now to the email portal. All right, email number 1 is from Dane Virali. He says, love the mix, dude. He's talking about my re-edit of Hardwired to Self-Destruct. My only unimportant critique is that I need the second half of Spit Out the Bone to stay intact. Haha. I love that pre-guitar harmony vamp and the repeating of the specific riff because I love it and it's worth letting it breathe. But that's my personal bias towards my favorite song on the record. Yeah, I've gotten some response where people are like, "Oh no, you cut, you cut this or that." People who disagree with the edit, and then of course there's the snarky, shitheads all over YouTube. Yeah, it's not for everybody. Yeah, I'm gonna probably cut into your favorite song, and if someone did that to, I'm just choosing songs that I know will enrage the internet. But for me, like Carpe Diem Baby or Where the Wild Things Are, if someone cut up Blackened or something, I wouldn't love that either. But there's really going to be no way for me to have done this project in a way that everyone goes perfect. So I get it. If I took a scalpel to your beloved song, that's just the nature of it. But I do appreciate the feedback. He says, it's funny I realized how much Iron Maiden is in there. The Hallowed Be Thy Name riff is recycled somewhere along the way, and I heard Spanish Castle Magic riff from Hendrix more than once, too. As a side note, last I checked just now, there's some missing years in the A Year in the Life of Metallica series. Am I tripping? You ain't tripping, baby. If you look through the episode list, I saw a few missing. According to my quick check after scrolling and searching the Spotify list, 2012 through 2017 are missing. So your wish is my command, dude. Here we are. We're going to burn down 2012. Thank you for the email, homie. Email number 2. This is, I believe, Isabel wrote back in. Hi again, Clint. Awesome episode as usual. It makes me really happy to hear that you're considering revisiting Some Kind of Monster again. It's truly a great documentary, has lots of stuff that's worth watching with fresh eyes, not to mention all the funny moments that have become memes for us in the Metallica community. Of course, he quit the fucking band, etc. I think your point about Lars's abilities being proven and how much he has done and how much success he has seen is a very good point. There are a lot of musicians, often guitarists I've noticed, who seem to get a ton of shit from people because they're not quote-unquote virtuosos enough. Some examples are Slash, Keith Richards, and Kirk. Sure, there probably are guitarists out there who are technically quote-unquote better, could do more complex stuff, but would any of their bands want to replace him with one of those players? Hell no. GNR, the Stones, and Metallica would not be right without them. Same with Lars. I mean, that's the first I've heard that someone was saying that Slash wasn't a good guitar player. Actually, you know what? That's not true. Johnny Sword, good friend of mine, former bass player for Morgan Wade, we did get into an argument once where he was kind of ripping on Slash. And I fired up. We used to have these epic arguments on the bus. And I remember I fired up Don't Damn Me from Use Your Illusion 1. And I was like, dude, listen to this. He also... I was going off on a big tangent about how much I loved Joe Perry, and I loved, in particular, the Get a Grip album, and then in particular on that album, how much I love the song Living on the Edge, which I think is kind of a masterpiece. And he was just ripping on the solo. Remember in the video where Joe Perry's playing on that train track and the train's coming, and then right before the train, he steps right to the side of it? I mean, Johnny Storr is 10 years younger than me. Maybe he doesn't have the cultural context of waiting for that to come on MTV. But man, Slash not being a good guitar player, I just can't imagine it. Now, people ripping on Kirk. The thing about Kirk is you can point to maybe the last couple of albums that seem to have uninspired lead playing. You can point to many different live blunders, particularly in the last 20 years. But go play Master of Puppets or And Justice for All or the Black Album, and there's just no question, Keith Richards, I mean, who's going to fuck with Keith Richards? Like, the Stones aren't the Stones aren't Van Halen. So when you look at the DNA, the cool swagger, all of that's really Keith. Obviously Keith and Mick, but Keith is such a huge part of it. I got to see the Stones live. It was actually the first show that they did without the drummer who passed away. Charlie Watt passed away. And man, Keith Richards was amazing. So slinky and sexy and cool. And he even sang a few songs. And there's a really good Keith Richards solo album called Main Offender that everyone should check out. But anyway, I digress. She goes on to say, this is not Metallica related, but you said in an earlier episode when talking about the movie Sinners that you'd gladly take movie recommendations. So I figured I'd ask if you've seen The Lost Boys or Near Dark, both 80s vampire movies, 2 of my favorites. Their soundtracks are also great. Highly recommended if you haven't seen them already. Thanks for your time. Have it good. Yeah, I don't know if you can tell in my studio right behind me right there, I have a big poster of the Lost Boys. I'm a huge fan of the Lost Boys. It's probably my favorite vampire movie. And I mean, I may have seen it 20, 30 times. I've seen Near Dark. I like Near Dark. I don't remember much about it, but I have seen it. I remember liking it. Maybe on the special Halloween episodes this year in 2026, we'll do our favorite top vampire movies, which that seems kind of far away now, but time is accelerating at I mean, I can't believe it's in the middle of April right now. I feel like just yesterday I was graduating high school. Thank you, Isabel, for the email. Email number 3. John from Seattle, New Jersey. Okay. After the success of the Black Album, it feels like the band had nowhere left to climb. In a sense, went into an early quote-unquote retirement. Not in terms of output, but in terms of ambition. They'd already reached the top of rock, and instead of pushing further, they settled into sustaining it. So this is an opinion that John, I believe it's John Robinson, who's a new patron, by the way, has about the Load era Metallica. He says, the Load Reload era aesthetic reads to me as, quote unquote, we can do whatever we want now. It's looser, more relaxed, less driven. Watching Cunning Stunts, my reaction was that they basically picked up exactly where they left off at the end of the Black Album tour. The house lights up, they play a cover. It feels like a continuation of the end of that run, not the beginning of something else new. They didn't open with 2x4, which would have been... He ended up correcting this. He means they didn't open up with Ain't My Bitch, which would have been consistent with earlier album cycles, e.g. Enter Sandman on the Black Album tour, Blackened on Damaged Justice. That choice alone suggests a different mindset. Then the Load era is followed by a covers record and a sojourn with a symphony, talking, of course, about Garage Inc. and S&M. Both great, but also consistent with the band in a more reflective, less forward-driven phase. It's not until a midlife crisis, Saint Anger, then the release of Death Magnetic that it feels like they consciously go back to work. And you see that show up again structurally, like opening tours with the album opener. Further evidence of this quote-unquote early retirement phase, plaid boxer shorts and Jason's outfit. Yeah, he's talking about Jason wearing the shorts with the sort of high athletic white socks at a sold-out arena show as the bass player for the coolest rock band of all time. I still don't get it. Someone did write in, they were like, isn't it kind of cool that Jason did that? And it's like, yeah, I guess it's kind of cool that he did it, but also kind of dorky. It's like, look, I could show up to a gig and be wearing like fisherman's cargo khaki fucking pantaloons, and there would be something sort of punk rock about not caring, but it would still also look ridiculous. I mean, we want to see our rock stars look cool. I don't think that's controversial. I'm not saying that's all there is. There's plenty of examples of artists and bands out there who only look cool, and they spent too much time trying to look cool instead of making a good record. True, but why can't we do both? You can do both. You can put some black pants on. Black pants is like a 98% improvement over shorts and white athletic socks, boy. Okay, John ends his email saying, anyway, thanks for all you do. I'd happily come on to talk early 90s Metallica shows. I thought you might enjoy the photo of my younger self. Yeah, I did enjoy that. See if you can spot the kid who quite wasn't getting what he wanted out of the 6th grade band. Best, John from Seattle, New Jersey. Yeah, these are all really interesting thoughts. Early retirement. Does the Load Reload era represent the boys resting on their laurels? And I don't think it'll be that surprising that I don't think so. I really don't think so at all, actually. Let's just take it point by point. He says they'd already reached the top of rock, and instead of pushing further, they settled into sustaining it. I actually think that I think they took creative risks. I think that they could have made the Black Album Part 2. That would have actually been sustaining it. Now, did the Load Reload era coincide with the peak of their MTV commercialness? I do think it did, and I do think that it was a like right time, right place. Fuel, Memory Remains, Unforgiven 2, Sunglasses, Short Hair. Like it was like prime for MTV. But it was really the Black Album with Enter Sandman that was the big MTV thing, even going back to 1. So I think they could have rested on their laurels by either continuing to tour the Black Album, right? Hey guys, we made the biggest metal album ever, and we toured it for 3 years. They could have taken a 2-year break and then been like, let's do another Black Album tour, or let's make the Black Album Part 2. I think to make a 30-song alternative metal album and completely changed their entire thing was actually them pushing and being ambitious. Now, whether or not it was successful, we'll all disagree about and, talk about for the rest of our lives, which is fun. But I'm not sure that Load and Reload artistically is an example of them not pushing forward. I think that is them pushing forward into that's new terrain for them, man. Mama Said is new terrain. There's the seed of it in Nothing Else Matters for the Mama Saids, the Low Man's lyrics. There's obviously self-referential stuff with the Unforgiven, Unforgiven 2, the Off to Never Neverland, King Nothing. They're starting to reference themselves in a way, which I think is interesting. He says Fade to Black and Memory Remains. I do think that is interesting, becoming self-referential, but we've not seen anything like it. So it's hard to imagine that that's them resting on their laurels. Okay, he says, watching Cunning Stunts, he talks about them picking up where they left off because they open with a cover with the lights up. And then that they didn't open with Ain't My Bitch, which is what they historically had been doing. And then they did go back to that formula after Saint Anger. But see, I would argue that the Death Magnetic return to what worked was them kind of being safe. I mean, there's so many factors involved, and we're talking about over a decade of real human beings' lives. So it's just hard to reduce it to something. But if we are going to just look at that, I think them going back to opening with that the sort of soft intro into a thrasher a la Blackened, Battery, Fight Fire. The Day That Never Comes being the sort of one-esque song is track number 4. There's an instrumental, them referencing themselves, them going back to what worked because they'd spent so much time experimenting. You talk about how Garage Inc. and S&M were further proof that they were like not pushing forward. I don't know about Garage Inc., but definitely S&M was them trying to do something different and artistic. I don't know, maybe we take it for granted, but there just was no other band doing that. And at the time, there was a little bit of pushback that it was lame. I loved the intro of it. Maybe it was the intro of the documentary about the making of S&M, where there's this like woman playing a beautiful violin, and then Jason instead just takes the violin and smashes it. I think that actually was kind of brave of them and cool. And I for me personally, and I realize that my opinion is probably biased because I love this era so much. I don't think that they started getting truly lost until obviously with Some Kind of Monster, Jason leaving, post I Disappear stuff. James was getting lost on his own, but Jason deciding to leave and walking away from them, I think was just the biggest catalyst. That will forever kind of be the big thing that was the wake-up call. And then after that, yeah, Saint Anger, which they made that at the lowest point, the creatively just no power. It's actually amazing they were still able to make such an interesting record. But I think most people agree that Saint Anger is kind of in its own category. If you just take the title track, compare Saint Anger to the song Injustice for All, to the song Ride the Lightning, to anything on the Blackout, it just makes no sense almost, other than that they were having a crisis. It's a crisis album. So then you have Death Magnetic where they're like, okay, first of all, we are much stronger. We're better. We've come through all of that turmoil. Also, we need to, I think there was an ego thing where they're like, we need to remind the world that we kick ass, that we're the metal kings. And they did. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Death Magnetic was a statement album that landed for me. So, interesting thoughts. I might be wrong. Continue to write in. Let me know. Was Load and Reload Metallica sort of creatively stagnant, resting on their laurels, not pushing the boundaries? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know. I appreciate you, John. Thank you for the email. All right, our last email, I believe. Yeah, last email from our good friend Sam says he wrote in talking about what he did and did not like about the re-edits of Hardwired, which were interesting. All interesting points, all fair. He says, broadly, I was thinking about the fact that I noticed the edits a lot more in this album than in 72 Seasons or Saint Anger, not in the sense that the edits are messy, but because of two things. Firstly, I've listened to Hardwired, especially the first half, much more than 72 Seasons and Saint Anger, so I know the songs better. But secondly, I wonder if the COVID-era remote songwriting of 72 Seasons made a difference. I don't know if I can express this in an email rather than talking it out, but basically 72 Seasons has much more cut and paste filler because the process began with writing via Zoom, while Hardwired was more in the room organic, so the transitions are a little better. The quote-unquote new information you talk about when they repeat riffs is a little more present. Interestingly, we never got any studio making of videos from 72 Seasons like we did for Death Magnetic and Hardwired, maybe because so much of it was remote. I feel like I could write a whole essay on this theory, but I'll leave it at that. Curious if you think there's something to it. As always, keep up the good work. Sam from Boston, Massachusetts, previously Australia, always New Jersey. Yeah, I think that there was a real possibility, and I may or may not have insight into this, inside information. I don't know. You guys can make your own minds up about that. I do think that there is a sense that the 72 Seasons album was accelerated because of COVID, right? A lot of projects were either shelved or accelerated because everyone's stuck at home. So there is an idea that everyone's stuck. We don't know what's going to happen. Let's make a record. It's a great time to make a record. But there is a pandemic happening, and there's a lot that's still not known about how dangerous it is, how it affects people, how to mitigate risk when you are a band, when you have a studio, when you have engineers and people who work for you. I do know that they were getting tested every day that they were showing up to the studio. And I think it's possible that a lot of what we hear on 72 Seasons were sort of leftovers from Hardwired that are good. I mean, they got a whole bag of riffs. Let's do something with it. So, and it's hard to make good stuff. It's just hard. So if you've got stuff that's pretty good and it sounds pretty good, you got a good little song here. But yeah, let's make it sound like Metallica. Let's double it up. Let's add this. Let's make it long. And what I am missing personally with the new stuff, and more so, definitely true, more so in 72 Seasons than Hardwired, is a sense that each section is propelling the song in a meaningful way. Instead, it does feel like there are elongated sections that feel like they were just put in there to make it longer. And so I don't think I'm the only fan that feels that way. I can listen to the song Injustice for All, and there's not anything I want to cut out of that song. Now, maybe it's because that song's been out since 1988, and I've listened to it thousands of times and when I was a kid, and there's all sorts of reasons why. Maybe people are too critical these days. Maybe if Spit Out the Bone came out in 1988, it'd be considered the masterpiece that we consider Blackened to be. It's so hard to tell. But I definitely think there is something to it. I mean, it was a COVID era album. It was accelerated. It was made under very interesting duress with limited crew, getting tested, people only able to come in certain points. A lot of it written and recorded remotely. Maybe that is the deal. I do think that 72 Seasons is a continuation of Hardwired, and the Hardwired was made, by all accounts, in a normal process. We got to see much of it in the documentary. So I don't know if it can all be blamed on that. I do think this is just where they're going. I just think this is how they make records now, at least with Greg Fidelman. So people ask me all the time, like, what would a new, fresh take on a Metallica album look like? I think you get a Bob Rock back in there, and you maybe don't make the album at HQ. But they have to be ready and willing to show up in that kind of fire. And I think that's just tough. There's no, we've talked about this on recent episodes. There's no real external incentive to do that anymore. Culture has decided that records and music in general are completely disposable. So it's just no longer worth it to spend the money, which again, I don't think money is a huge consideration for them, but we are going to get into it with this Orion Festival stuff here in a few minutes. It is a consideration. You can't just waste millions of dollars. There's a reason they didn't keep making movies, which we'll talk about through the never when we get into the 2013 year in the life of Metallica. If the idea is like, let's just get something out that we're proud of, that's good. Like, I think that they should be proud as hell of 72 Seasons. I think 72 Seasons kicks ass. And they did dig deep. I mean, thematically, the idea of the first 18 years of your life and the trauma you go through, but also the things that make you who you are. And I think there's some really confessional shit on 72 Seasons. Inamorata, Too Far Gone. If Darkness Had a Son, it's all right there. If Darkness Had a Son, here he's saying, I am a son of darkness. I pray for holy water. Room of Mirrors is very confessional. I mean, James really bared a lot of it on the album. I don't think he is willing to do anything less than that. But there's just no way around it. You lose your fastball. I mean, we're watching LeBron James right now in the playoffs do amazing things that are unprecedented for his age. But he's not playing like, 22-year-old LeBron James. It's just impossible, dude. We're doing this all together in real time. I think as lovers of a band, as we're grappling with our own mortality with the passage of time. we see these guys, they look older, and we go, oh, they look old now. And then we're like, oh, well, we're old now. And it's not fair in a way to judge their music by their best work. It's just, how could they ever do anything that would compare with Master of Puppets or Injustice for All? It's all very interesting. Yeah, I wish we could. I wish we all lived in the same town and we could all get a beer and talk about this once a Sunday. But we can't. But we can do the emails, and I appreciate you, Sam, for writing in. We're going to hear from Nuprin, and then we're going to talk all about 2012, including the ill-fated Orion Plus Music and More Festival. I think that might have been a problem right there too, is the branding. But first, let's hear from our buddies at Nuprin.
I can't talk about it anymore. It's giving me a headache.
Here, take 2 of these.
Ah, Nuprin. Little, yellow, different.
Okay, getting into 2012 in the world of Metallica. So no new album, no major single, really no huge tour. I mean, they did end up doing this summer festival thing that they would have done anyway, but they turned it into this 20th anniversary of the Black Album, where they played the album in reverse. They debuted Struggle Within, Don't Tread on Me, and My Friend in Misery for the first time. They made that summer thing cool, but really this summer festival for a year like 2012, okay, is let's go make money. There's festivals every summer in Europe, in the States. They're huge money makers. A band like Metallica can headline all of them if they want to. Believe me, especially at this time, if they're not doing headlining festivals every summer, it's only because they didn't want to. But this is the year that they started filming for the Through the Never movie. They did an 8-night residency in Mexico City. We're going to talk about that. Really, the interesting thing that happened in terms of beyond the festival was that they got their masters back and they started Blackened Recordings. So we're going to talk about the implications of all that. Like I said, we're going to hear from my buddy Drew Holcomb, who's going to come in and tell us a little bit about how difficult it is to start, maintain, and run a successful festival. And we're going to watch the Ride the Lightning set from Orion 2012. That will be available on YouTube, Patreon exclusive. So go to the Patreon and support the show, and you get a bunch of free shit over there. So let's go through month by month, which is kind of how we did these before. But in some of these months, they're like sort of dormant, calm before the storm type months. So January 30th, we get Beyond Magnetic released, the 4 leftover tracks from Death Magnetic. What we got? We got Hate Train, Just a Bullet Away, Hell and Back, and Rebel of Babylon. So we'd already seen these songs debut on the 30th anniversary shows just a month before. The only song I think that really could have gone on the album is Hell and Back. And that's the one that they played this whole summer when they went to Europe to do these Black Album anniversary shows. They've played it 16, 17 times. The other 3 new Beyond Magnetic songs, they never played again live after those 30th anniversary gigs. And I kind of get why. I think they're good. I think they're cool. I think that they have the same sort of problems Death Magnetic has. Really dry vocals. They're really long. I'm going to be doing a re-edit of those songs. I did do Just a Bullet Away on Tom Quee's Alpha Metallica podcast. I mean, look, dude, I love Metallica. A huge Metallica fan. So if you just put me in a room and play Metallica songs to me, I'm going to be like, I like these. I like Rebel of Babylon. They do make repeated listens a little tedious. And I get why they weren't on the albums. But that's what they did. So, when you drop an EP like this, and we do it in my industry too, and you just want to give something to the fans, especially if you know that you're not going to have a lot of creative output in that next year. Now, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. It is no simple feat to plan and execute an entire festival. That takes years. And then also getting ready to make the movie. It takes so long to make all this stuff. And it's very difficult to write and record a new album while you're trying to take these big swings, whether or not in hindsight we can see that they were or were not successful. But so they give us Beyond Magnetic on CD, which I have around here somewhere. February 7th, they announced the Orion Plus More Music Festival. What they tried to do is they tried to just make it this like an extension of them as a band, an extension of their personalities. It was going to be more than just the 4 stages and you walk across. They really wanted it to be unique and cool. And James has said that they sort of borrowed it from the European festivals that really seem like more of a like cultural events than they were just I'm going to see the headliner or maybe a couple of smaller bands on the smaller stage. So that's a big deal. And then starting in May, they hit the European festival circuit, and that's where they spend most of the summer, most of May, a little bit of June, and it's like the Rock in Rio, Sonosphere, just every major festival. They debuted, of course, the Black Album songs they'd never played live. I love this too, that the album is such heavy hitters in it, and it was sequenced in such a way that if they start with the last song all the way down, they're basically ending with their encore song. Isn't that amazing? And I think that what's interesting too about this is I believe that this is the first time they ever did the gimmick of the tour is we're going to celebrate an entire album. That's a whole thing now. Whole bands will do whole tours. Jimmy Eat World and Death bands will even combine anniversaries of their albums. I saw the band live and Stone Temple Pilots do an anniversary tour where SDP played Purple and live was supposed to play Thor and Copper, which they didn't really do. You know, Death Cab for Cuties do it. They did the Transatlanticism tour. Jimmy Eat World's doing the Bleed American tour, and so on and so forth. That's Green Day did the American Idiot and Dookie. It's just a thing now. But in 2012, that wasn't really much of a thing. And I think for Metallica, you know, there comes a time in any band where you face this idea that you are both viable as creative artists, you're still making stuff that matters, but you also are a legacy. You know, you have a legacy. So yeah, they celebrated that, and I think it was a cool idea. It wasn't the only thing that they did. Here, let's look at a typical set list from that run. So May 7th through May 30th, they're over there in Europe. So let's look at we'll look at Lisbon, Portugal, Rock in Rio. And if you're on YouTube, you can see all this. Other acts, Mastodon, Evanescence, and Sepultura. So they open with Hit the Lights, Master of Puppets, Fuel, Bells, Hell and Back, of course. Then they played a kind of Black Album montage video, which is nice. And then Struggle Within, My Friend in Misery, The God That Failed, Wolf and Man, through Nothing Else Matters, Through the Never, Don't Tread on Me, Rome, Unforgiven, Holding Thou, Sabbath Truth, Sandman, Encore, Fight Fire, One, and Seek and Destroy. So, which I believe was, if we look at another date, let's see, let's look at, did they do Download? If we go into June, yeah, they did the Download Festival, Castle Donington. Let's see if it's the same. Hit the Lights, Puppets, okay, Four Horsemen, Bells. They still do Hell and Back. They end with Battery, One, Seek. So they had about 4 rotating slots on that summer tour. And maybe we'll do a future episode where we watch one of those, but pretty cool. And they were done with that by coming right up to the Orion Festival, right? So, yeah, June 10th, they played the last show in Nickelsdorf, Austria. Shout out to my friend Linda, who's Austrian. And then that brings us right up to June 23rd and June 24th, the Orion Music Festival, the big experiment. Okay, so like we were saying before, interesting. They wanted it to be an immersive experience. Each of the band members had their own sort of personality expressed in the festival. James had a car and motorcycle show featuring a lot of his own personal cars. And then, there's like his greaser buddies who are like just living that lifestyle, dude. Super into that, who were there kind of curating and running that part of it. And then you had Kirk Hammett did like basically what will become in 2014. He did his Fear Festival, but it's just basically like a little museum of all of his very cool, like deep collector memorabilia of the horror genre. You had an early version of the Metallica Museum that we now see at every Metallica stop. They basically they've taken the nuggets of this festival and put it into their like Metallica takeover weekends now. And then with Lars, you have the film tent where he showed 3 movies each day. He showed the Mission to Lars both days with an AMA with a director. He showed the first day he showed Blue Valentine, the Ryan Gosling movie, which is an incredible bummer. Good movie, but incredibly sad. Hemingway and Gellhorn, which is a movie he was in, that I believe was an HBO exclusive. It was interesting. And then plus the lineup was so interesting too. It was like not just a metal festival. And these are all ingredients that are part of a double-edged sword, okay? That on the one hand make this festival cool and unique, but on the other hand, I think made it difficult to get buy-in, to get people to put the money down, because there's so many different things that people just weren't into. All right. So tickets, $90 for a single day, $150 for the weekend, which I feel like is not bad. $150 to see 2 Metallica shows. And then there was a $750 package that was a VIP that included perks like, parking access. You could watch the show from like a platform. That's pretty steep for that time. But $150 for both days is pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty reasonable pricing for the experience. I mean, so we talked about it was the car show. It was a skate park. So there was all this tie-in to like early thrash and punk rock culture. There was a skate park. There was all this stuff with Vans. Metallica has had a collaborative partnership with Vans for a long time. I even have some of the Vans Metallica shoes. They had the live at the Vans house in London release around Hardwired. We got the horror stuff. There was kind of an alt stage that had comedy. Jim Brewer was there, Don Jameson. So yeah, it was kind of in a way of Metallica saying like, this festival is an extension of who we are as people. And again, the strength of that is that James and Lars are very different kind of people. Lars is over here in a tent trying to show people the movie Blue Valentine. James is over here with a bunch of greasers popping open the hood and admiring a chrome engine. You know what I'm saying? So let's talk about the lineup. On Saturday, the main stage, the Orion stage, you have Baroness, Lucero, my friends Lucero, tour mates of mine, the Gaslight Anthem, Modest Mouse, and Metallica. And they played Ride the Lightning, which we're going to watch Ride the Lightning. That's going to be up on Patreon. The Fuel stage had The Sword, a band called Fucked Up, Cage the Elephant, and Arctic Monkeys. Very different. That's kind of an alt-rock stage. There was what they called the Heavy stage, Black Tusk, Let Live, or Let Live, KYNG, Red Fang, and Suicidal Tendencies, which Rob guested with, which was very cool. So then Saturday's lineup, the Orion stage, you had Ghost, Best Coast, Eric Church, and Metallica. So you have Eric Church, who we've done shows with Eric. Eric's fantastic, actually. But you have Eric Church playing right before Metallica. So, so you're kind of forcing this on your fans, okay? Not a lot of overlap with Metallica and Eric Church fans. Best Coast is this hip indie rock California band that are awesome. I mean, I have Best Coast records, but it's too ambitious, in my opinion. This is too ambitious. Ghost, which obviously rule. Best Coast, okay. Eric Church, not the right crowd. And then Metallica. So, this is a tough sell. On the Fuel stage on the next night, you have A Place to Bury Strangers, never heard of him. Then Gary Clark Jr., blues guitar slinger guy. Then Volbeat, then Avenged Sevenfold. Poor Gary Clark on that day. The Heavy stage had Thy Will Be Done, Landmine Marathon, Torche, The Black Dahlia Murder, and Sepultura. Okay, the film tent we talked about. So, the other movie that Lars played was Before the Wall, Body and Being. Blue Valentine, Mission to Lars. On Sunday, Hemingway and Gellhorn, Before the Wall, Body and Being, and Mission to Lars. And Lars kind of showed up too and said hi. And, from what I understand, looking this up, it wasn't like a sign-up thing. You could kind of just roam in and out of these tents and these experiences, depending on availability. If the tent's packed in that capacity, you obviously can't. But a movie is a really hard thing to ask someone to sit through on a day that you're at a festival and you just want to drink some beers and walk around and catch a few shows. It's just such a change of gears to go sit down, and especially, I just can't reiterate this enough, and those of you who've seen it will know what I'm talking about, to sit down and watch Blue Valentine. Like, dude, show Some Kind of Monster. Show, the band documentary. Show Spinal Tap. Show, A Year and a Half in the Life of Metallica. It's too much. It's too much to sit down and watch Blue Valentine for 2.5 hours in a dark, cavey, film tent, and then walk out and try to go catch Volbeat. You know what I mean? The Kirk's horror stuff and the car show seem a lot easier to my favorite band number one's over here, and then there's a 45-minute changeover, and I don't really care about this other band over here. Let's go check out that car show. That makes sense. I read an article where it says that they sold about 24,000 tickets for the first weekend, and we're going to obviously have talked to Drew Holcomb about why that's just simply not enough. James did go on to say, let's read this article. This says, Metallica's James Hetfield, we lost millions of dollars on each edition of Orion Music More Festival. James says the band lost millions of dollars by staging the Orion Music More Festival, making it highly unlikely the band will get involved in such a project ever again. And they're talking about the 2013 one as well. It says the Detroit one drew 40,000 people over the course of 2 days. The band moved the event to Detroit after holding the inaugural edition in Atlantic City, New Jersey in 2012, in what Billboard at the time called a smooth transition for a quote-unquote successful second year. Speaking to the Metallica Fan Club magazine, shout out to friend of the show, friend of mine, Stefan Shirazi, Hetfield stated, "I'm so glad we did Orion. Those two we did were fun. We got some bands out there in front of people, our fans mainly, and that was the whole idea. If it would have broken even, we'd still be doing it, but we lost millions both of the times. We can't do that. At some point, business does come into play. Why would we keep doing something that's damaging us and could prevent us from moving forward?" Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. If the festival's a huge money suck, then they can't make the movie they want to make. They can't do, they got to look at their bottom line and go, well, we lost millions in 2012, millions in 2013, millions on the movie. At some point, you got to quit losing millions of dollars. He added, it was fun to do. We had a blast doing it, employed a lot of people, helped out both cities it was in. A lot of good came out of it, but we cannot do it again. Asked why he thought Orion didn't work, Hetfield said, maybe it was too adventurous bill-wise. I think it was too wide. If it was more of a metal fest or really hard, maybe. What we were going for was quote-unquote edge. Every band that was there had some kind of edge. Didn't matter what genre they were in. I won't say every band, but that's the vibe we were going for. Maybe it needed to be a little more secular. He continued, how do festivals get big? I don't know. If it's billed as the hippie festival, do all the hippies come? If it's billed as the death metal fest, do all the death metal people come? He says, who knows? Maybe it was us attaching our name. He went on to speculate why Metallica fans were reluctant to spend their hard-earned money on a festival featuring a bunch of non-metal acts. He said, why at the Metallica Festival are the Red Hot Chili Peppers playing? Or why did Eric Church play? That's wrong. I'm not going. That's him imagining what people might be saying. Like, oh, what am I doing with Red Hot Chili Peppers? What the fuck, Eric Church? He says, tribalism, he says, I love tribal earth. I love belonging. I love a sense of family. I love a sense of it's okay to be different where you're different together. And everyone is different. Everyone knows they're connected at the end of the day, but maybe sometimes you just think, why can't you just like what you like because you like it? So basically what he's saying is people are kind of tribal by nature, and there's not really much you can do about that. And I think in very small doses, you can get people out of that. I think this podcast is a great example of that, where I'll talk at length about Bob Dylan or Dave Matthews or any of the other, the NBA, any of this other stuff I love. I'm not really identified as a metalhead really at all, other than that I like Metallica. I like big metal bands. If you look through my record collection, you're going to find every Pantera album, several Iron Maiden albums, every Black Sabbath album. You're going to find Sepultura. You're going to find Ghost. You're going to find fucking Tool and whatever the fuck. But I don't think anyone would describe me as a metalhead. And I'm not interested in that. I think Metallica is bigger than metal. And that's really what they were trying to do. They know that. I think that they're the ones who built it all. They know themselves. And I think they were trying to translate that transcendence into the festival. And it probably would have worked if they were able to continue risking the investment. But again, at some point, you just can't. So that was the Orion 2012. And, at this point in New Jersey, they sold 24,000 tickets. It's not enough, but it's still, if you watch the videos, it looks packed. And I think people mostly left really happy. I watched a lot of fan videos responding to being there, and it looked like it went really well. People weren't being, AR'd, and people weren't dying, and people weren't unable to get water. There's way worse festival experiences out there that we've all seen. So none of that was an issue. It's just an issue of getting more people to come, and getting more people to come is hard when it's such a broad buy-in. All right, now let's hear from my friend Drew Holcomb, who I've known for around 20 years, who is a touring artist, and he's on tour right now with his band on the West Coast. This tour ends with 2 nights at the Ryman in Nashville, Tennessee, and then he will be out on the road doing mostly sheds this summer and fall with the great band friends of ours, Need to Breathe. So he's going to come on right now and sort of help us understand how he started his festival called Moon River, which started in Memphis, Tennessee, went for 10 years, and maybe help us understand a little bit about what was going on, the risk associated with starting a festival, so we can understand the Metallica piece a little better. So without any further ado, here's my buddy Drew Holcomb. First of all, thanks for joining us. I know that you're on the road. You're taking time, which is hard to do out there on the road. People think that it's just a bunch of free time, but it's hard to chop up your schedule like this, but you're now speaking to thousands and thousands of Metallica fans around the world. How does that feel?
It feels good. I feel a little intimidated, as an outsider, but I mean, I love Metallica, but I can't say that I'm a super fan, but glad to
Yeah.
be on and happy to chat with an old friend about something that matters to me. So
Yeah, well, there will be no quizzes, so you're no problem there.
thank you.
I was actually thinking about how long have we known each other? I mean, it's got to be over 15 years, but probably longer, right?
Was I engaged to Ellie when that's kind of how I feel like I wasn't married yet.
No, when we met, you would just
So it
kind
was
of
2005.
yes, I think you were like newly in love,
Yeah, I was.
and
Thankfully it worked out. But yeah, that
yeah,
would have been 2005 because I just started touring and making music and met you in Birmingham. And
yeah, crazy.
yeah, we've both been in it for the long haul.
It is interesting this many years later to just look around and see who's just still standing. I mean, that's its own interesting thing.
It's a massive amount of respect for all of us who have, regardless of our path.
For sure. For sure. It was so good to see you guys at the Laurie McKenna show the other night. It was like, oh, there's still, and you had your kids too. That's another interesting thing about lasting this long is now you look around and everyone's got their kiddos who look like them. And it's such a fun stage of life to be in.
It is. And to get to share music with them is especially fun.
Oh my gosh, I know. And we were crying that whole night just because of Laurie's songs, but we'll get into all that. And I want to talk about the tour that you're on and all this stuff. So let me fill you in a little bit about the Metallica thing. And then I want to hear about Moon River and you can help us understand this. So in 2012, Metallica's been at the height of power for a very long time. They're just one of those bands that's been big for so long. So in 2012, no new album, no new single. What they did that year was they launched what they called the Orion. It's a tough title. It's called the Orion and More Music Festival. Because what they tried to do, which is a cool idea, is there was a lot more going on. It was kind of more modeled after a European festival where there's a lot more experiences there. It's not just like 3 or 4 stages with different bands. It had a car show because James Hetfield's really into like muscle cars. It had a film tent because Lars Ulrich's a big film nerd and he was showing films with like Q&As with directors. Kirk Hammett had like a horror tent. They had a Metallica museum. They also had a really eclectic lineup. So it wasn't just like metal bands. It was like Eric Church did the first year, Arctic Monkeys, Cage the Elephant. Yeah, it's pretty neat. Best Coast. They did it for 2 years, 2012 and 2013. They lost millions and they just couldn't sustain it. And they, kind of gracefully bowed out in 2014. So that's sort of the context. And we can sort of get into more details if we need to. But talk a little bit about Moon River, when you started it, how the idea came to be. And
it's interesting to sort of like to work backward a little bit. I mean, the festival Moon River, we started in 2013 and basically it lasted a decade. And now it's kind of on ice just because of reasons we can get into in a minute that have, almost all practical reasons. So yeah, it started with the same thing, like a dream and a vision. I wanted to share my hometown and my fans with other bands that we've seen on the road, and it was just kind of a very family reunion kind of vibe, and it was small. Obviously, we're not Metallica, so we're trying to sell 2,500 tickets. Looking back on it, it was quite a bit of foolishness, because we didn't have any idea what we were getting into, and I didn't know things that like the first year, day one, we ran out of ice at 1 p.m. and it was 90 degrees outside. We ran out of cash on day 2 on Sunday at noon and had to send somebody to the dog track on the other side of the river in Arkansas to get change because our concessions had no change. I mean, it's just like a very bootstrapped thing. That said, it was a really beautiful communal event because we spent cheaply. I mean, we literally had 9 bands sharing 2 green rooms the first, and so everybody that came was a friend. And I called him and said, "Hey, look here, let me set expectations here. This is not going to be like a Live Nation festival setup where you're going to have your own trailer and all that kind of stuff."
were you able to offer guarantees to the bands?
Yeah, we did. We did offer guarantees.
I don't know if you mentioned this, but the first year was in Memphis, right? It's where you're from, and it later moved to Chattanooga. Is that right?
We outgrew the space in Memphis, and it was an uncovered stage. It was an old amphitheater. It's called Overton Park Shells, where Elvis had his first live show.
Yeah, I know that place. Yeah.
There was also, we had like weather issues where we just couldn't figure things out, you know. The other thing that was happening was we were spending all of our own money on it. And my manager and I, who, you know, he and his wife and I owned the thing together, we realized we were basically putting our houses at risk every year.
Right.
And we were like, we're not really in a financial place to do that. So we either need to find a partner or put it away. And so we found a partner, AC Entertainment, who famously started Bonnaroo. They at the time had a bunch of sort of mid-level regional festivals, High Water Fest, and a few others. And we sold the thing to them and have had a sort of profit sharing partnership. But they asked if we'd be willing to move it to Chattanooga, because at the time there was no real sort of Americana music type festival in Chattanooga, and it's, you draw sort of a population circle 250 miles around Memphis versus a 250-mile circle around Chattanooga. It's like 6x the number of people live in that Chattanooga circle.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, we just decided to move it there, and it was a huge success. It went from being a 2,500 cap festival and an $80 2-day ticket to a 13,000 cap festival at a $200 ticket, which are two very, very different things.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, I've sort of on a cursory level followed it this whole time, and I remember seeing bands like Wilco on the bill. Like some of our favorite, I know that you and I share these favorite bands. They're playing your festival. I always thought that was so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we had Hozier, we had
Right.
the Avett Brothers, we had Brandy Carlisle, we've had the National, Wilco, Leon Bridges. We had Zach Bryan right before he blew up. So yeah, we've had some incredible years. But what happened in the sort of post COVID was the expenses. I think this is what people don't realize about music festivals is you're basically creating a little city for 2 to 3 days. And one
Right.
thing you'll notice now, there's a lot of festivals will do these back-to-back weekends. They build the infrastructure, and they build 2 completely different genre-based festivals over the course of back-to-back weekends, like
Was that
Urban
like,
Beyond one, and then they do a big rock one the next weekend.
is Coachella and Stagecoach the same deal?
Yeah, Coachella, Stagecoach is the same deal. Ocean's Calling and Country Calling, Innings Fest and Extra Innings Fest,
That's
and
right.
they tend to have like Innings Fest, for instance, is kind of a like more pop alternative thing, and then Extra Innings is more a country Americana. So same space, flip the branding, change the genres, totally different audience.
And then they're able to mitigate the cost of setting it up, and then they can make another batch of money with but another batch of fans, I guess.
That's the vision. I don't know if it always works that way, but
When your festival made that jump, was the AC Entertainment, was your partner, was it just moving to Chattanooga, or were they also able, because they sound like maybe they're like an incubator for festivals, did they just have all this infrastructure to help promote it and help build around it?
oh, absolutely. They had a whole team of people. They had a design person, they had a ticketing specialist, they had a marketing specialist. Their booking person was also booking Bonnaroo. So they had just like a lot more clout and a lot more easy access phone calls to get the kind of bands that we get an answer a lot faster. Like, hey, Drew, who do you want to have? Oh, I'd love to talk to the Head and the Heart. Oh, great. Well, we talked to him at 3:00 today. Here's where their head's at with it. So it was just, the whole thing made it way, way easier. And we were able just to kind of be the vision of it. And then we also were no longer sort of financially at risk.
Yes. I mean, unbelievable. Does that also mean that when the festival started to make money, was that harder for you to share in the success of it too in that way, or did all that go back to next year's festival?
No, there was definitely some money to be made this every year. I mean, it kind of got lower and lower as the cost increased, for sure. But we made less money than we did in Memphis, but we had way less downside and risk. So it was definitely worth it.
I think I remember talking to you soon after you guys started it. Maybe you'd already moved it to Chattanooga, and you were telling me how you were just saying there's so many things that go into it that people probably don't realize. And then I think that might have
Yeah,
been before you started getting some help with it, and you were kind of doing it a lot of DIY. You and
yeah,
Paul.
yeah. You're thinking about like insurance liability and how many porta potties do we need to have, and
Yeah.
all the little things, parking, police presence, VIP activations, bus parking and van parking. There's a list of 1,000 things you don't think of when you dream up the idea.
Yeah. So I guess Wayne's World 2 probably wasn't a great indication of how difficult it can be. I don't know if you remember Wayne's stock. Well, yeah, the Metallica piece is interesting. They started it the first year they did it in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Both destinations were criticized. First one was Atlantic City, New Jersey. They sold 24,000 tickets, which is a lot, but
It's
it
a lot.
wasn't enough for them for how ambitious they were. Because I think, I
Hmm.
mean, we know people that are in big bands. We're friends with some of these people, and I do think there is a sense where a band like Metallica, they also made a movie around this time of year. They lost like $30 million trying to make a movie. But I do think that they maybe thought like, how could it fail, right? Like we have
Yeah,
such a
we're Metallica.
pedigree. We're Metallica, and we're
Yeah.
gonna. I think one of the tough things is they tried to make it so different. So where in their heads they were like, you can come here and be a car guy. You could be a movie nerd. Kirk's got the horror movie nerds over here. The Arctic Monkeys are on this stage. Best Coast is on this stage. Eric Church was direct support for Metallica. And they lost millions, but they obviously could weather that kind of storm. But the next year they moved it to Detroit and they were able to sell, 10,000 more tickets, but the same deal. And that was when they basically were like, we can't continue to do this. So the general narrative for a fan looking on the outside is like, it was just too big of a swing. And like, how long do festivals, is there a certain time where you're like, you're going to lose money for whatever, the first 2 years, 3 years? Is there a certain map you follow?
Well, I think that's one of the interesting things that, like, one of the great tensions in like popular music is, and it sounds like Metallica with Orion Fest was very much leaned heavy on the one side of this tension, which is maybe why it didn't work. But there's the vision and the experience that you want to create, and the idea, like, all those sort of subculture pockets that they created inside of the festival. Sometimes those things don't necessarily connect with your audience. Like, just because you like something doesn't mean your audience will.
Right.
So their audience may have just wanted them to put together a festival of a bunch of bands that they all love.
I know. Right.
And all those extra sort of curricular periphery things may have been like very expensive, and their fans like were not necessarily the reason they bought the ticket to the festival. Just to give a perfect example, like, people know that I like to play golf. So, one year Paul was like, we should add a day where people come and they play golf, and we do like a charity golf tournament as a part of the festival.
Yep.
And I'm like, no, let's not do that. The music fans don't care about that piece of my life. I mean, maybe like 2% of them do.
Well, that whatever the overlap is, though, with a Drew Holcomb fan who really also loves golf, it's perfect. But yeah, how big is
Yeah.
that? How big is that Venn diagram?
Yeah, and so a lot of times what happens is artists will spend on the dream and vision, and they're not paying attention to the commerce piece. So like the dream and the commerce like have to interlock for a festival to make sense.
Yeah. Right.
To keep going, because at some point, if you lose X number of dollars first year and you lose X number of dollars second year, you go, is there ever a scenario where this thing doesn't lose money? And if that's the case, do I love it so much that I'm willing to do all this work and lose money?
Right.
Or do I eventually want it to flip to where it becomes a profitable thing? And my guess is, for a band like Metallica, it's so much easier for them to go headline someone else's festival
Right.
and make a great ton of money, and then spend all that time they spent making Orion Fest, instead go enjoy their hobbies on their own time.
I think they probably thought, well, we play all these. We have a good idea of how they run. Why don't we just build our own world? Versus, what it's like if you have a light year, but you got 10 festival offers in the summer, you're going to make money.
Well, and there's also something I think most fans don't know about, which is called radius clauses. And so
Right.
when you play a festival, you typically have to sign a thing that says, like, let's say Chattanooga is a great example. We had a radius clause of 200 miles that anybody who was sort of headlining or near headlining had to sign, where for 120 days before and 90 days post festival, you cannot play, obviously, Chattanooga, but also Atlanta, Nashville, Birmingham, Knoxville, sort of 5 pretty good southern markets. So even for me, even though I was getting paid to play it as a musician, but also getting paid as a partner, there were multiple years where we had to say no to offers in those 5 markets that would have paid me more money than what I was going to make with Moon River.
Right.
And those would have been 1-day commitments that are just standard, like show up, play your show, go home.
Yeah. Did you ever have artists that you really wanted on the bill that were interested that just couldn't swing the radius clause?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes what you do is you negotiate it. They say, look, we've got this really great offer in Birmingham. We'd love to do Moon River, but we really need to get out of this radius clause. And then you say, okay, well, can we like take 10% off your guarantee or something like that? And then they,
Yeah.
it's all negotiation.
Well, I got to imagine too that those promoters in those markets who you get to know, that's a lot of the same people. They know festivals season's coming, and I don't know if it's easy for you to just talk to them directly and negotiate with them as well.
Yeah, no, you do. Yeah, there was like we sometimes would try to piggyback other festivals that were around the same time in the region, and then maybe get like a deal, because you can play Saturday night at our festival, Sunday night at theirs, and that routes nicely. So yeah, there's I will say there's like while the music business is kind of cutthroat, there's also a general sense of like, hey, we're all trying to like there's possibilities of win-win. Not everything is a zero-sum game.
Totally. So you said it's on ice. So what does that mean? Are you doing the Moon River at Sea thing that I saw?
Yeah, we're doing Moon River at Sea. I think which is going to be fun, but it's kind of a totally different thing. It's there's this company called Six Man that does the Rock Boat and
Yeah.
Kayamo and all these great music cruises, which we've done. And so we thought we while we're kind of waiting to see what happens with the the terrestrial version of the of Moon River, we're doing that. And if it goes well, we may do it again. But basically, the costs we kind of outgrew the site. According to that's also AC Entertainment got bought by Live Nation in the post-COVID
Oh wow.
whirl,
Jeez.
and the size of our festival doesn't really fit inside of their business model.
Ugh.
So I'll kind of leave it at that.
Yeah. I talk about that kind of thing a lot. People will be able to deduce what's gnarly about that. So Six Man, I've done many of those cruises. We've been on some of them together. Did a few rock boats,
sure.
and those are put together really great. I mean, to me, I just saw it online. The idea of like a Drew Holcomb curated festival on one of those cruises sounds awesome to me.
Yeah, we've got a great lineup, and for whatever reason, our fans are like the most like chill, normal, easy people to be around for 5 days.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be really fun. I mean,
Yeah,
we're
it's not always like that.
No, it's not.
But you're a pretty chill, easy dude to be around. So they probably take a lot of cues from your music and from you and from your wife. So
I
and
hope
then
so. Yeah.
in fact, the first rock boat I ever did was the headliner that year was Need to Breathe, who you're going to tour with.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
touring with
that's
them
right.
this summer.
Yeah, it starts mid-August through late September. It's about 30 shows, kind of coast to coast.
Amazing. It's like Sheds I saw, like Red Rocks, and
Yeah, mostly Sheds and some of those kind of newer large clubs.
yeah.
But mainly Sheds. Yeah.
Man, the first time I ever met them was I did if you can believe it, a co-headline tour. I was with Griffin House. It was 2010.
Oh my gosh.
2010, and it was clubs. It was like normal clubs. Yeah. And that was probably the last time they were ever in a club. And it was pretty clear the first show that it was not a co-headline tour,
Man, they've got a great fan base, and they've been making good records for a long time. And
yeah.
They're definitely an underdog. They're kind of always kind of underappreciated for the level of success they've had and the quality of the records they make.
Yeah, that's true.
They're a great rock and roll band.
And, great overlap in the fan bases too. I mean, it's such a great fit. Speaking of like fits at a festival and stuff, it's like I've been on bills my whole career that it like clearly made sense and some that just really did not make sense at all. And it makes a difference. It really does matter.
It does make a huge difference because, I mean, being on both sides of that, I've had openers that made great sense for our audience where the audience loved them and it just was very much a sort of simpatico thing. And sometimes you have an opener where you're like, oh man, our fans are not digging this. On the flip side of it, I've been on tours where we've opened and it's like perfect. It's a perfect match. And then there's other tours you go and you're like, these people do not give a damn about us.
I don't think I have this anymore because I'm not a young man anymore, but I used to almost like those because I would think like, oh, we just got to go out and prove that we're better or whatever it is. It felt like a challenge.
Yeah, there's definitely a challenge to it. I mean, we've done some country tours, like straight up mainstream country. And we found those fans are like really chatty and they're just there, like a lot of times they're just there to have a party.
Yeah.
And so you definitely had to adjust the set and throw in a Tom Petty song in the middle to get everybody singing along.
Yeah.
Going to give them your more sort of the banger list.
Well, it's rewarding when you get them, but sometimes sometimes you don't. And I find myself now, I'm like, if we're gonna go do support, I'm like, can you just make sure we're with somebody that they're gonna like us? Let's not make it harder than it has to be.
For sure.
What's been your favorite thing about it? I mean, what's your big takeaway that's a positive from your time doing it?
I think the coolest thing about it was the community that we built and sustained over the course of a decade, and hopefully will continue at some point in some way. But basically, music is a great bridge between strangers, and that's what happens at festivals. Is you're like in the crowd and you're just waiting on the band during changeover, and you start talking to the person next to you and find out, like, hey, what was your first Metallica show? What was your first whoever's about to play?
Yeah.
It just creates solidarity, and I think people walk away from festivals like feeling kind of injected with a little bit of feeling seen and having a place. And I think the other thing that's cool about it is you hear so much music you may not have heard before. We have people all the time that hey, yeah, we were just walking by the stage at whatever festival and heard you playing, and we've come to see you 5 or 6 times since and love your music and whatever. So you just never the sort of great mix of strange coincidences that happen at a festival that don't happen at a regular headline show.
Yeah, totally. And that sense of community too. I mean, Jesus, we need that more now than ever. So that's such a cool thing. Well, cool, man. Well, thank you for your time. You're on the road right now. I'm going to put the dates up here, but where are you going to be at for the next week? What's the next run of shows?
We're based on the West Coast, California this week, and then we Pacific Northwest on the weekend, and then home. And then we basically have 4 shows left. We got New Orleans, Dallas, and then a doubleheader at the Ryman in mid-May.
Sweet. And then 30 dates with Need to Breathe.
And then 30 dates starting in August.
Wow, this is a good year for y'all, man. That's great.
Yeah, busy, too busy.
Yeah. I know how it feels.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us and a bunch of metalheads around the world about festivals. It's good to see your face, and safe travels out there on the road.
All right, man. Appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
So there's that. We'll be talking about the Detroit one when we do 2013. So moving on. So then they go into July where they do the 8-show residency, where they were basically preparing for the sort of chaotic stage stuff that would happen in the Through the Never, which of course itself is referencing Cunning Stunts. At the time, it was a record-breaking group of shows. The director was there, Nimrod, who ended up doing the concert performance stuff Through the Never. And, it was just a great opportunity to test the choreography, test the pyro, test the stage construction during Enter Sandman, block angles, and just really get a feel for like how it's really going to go when they ended up filming it in Canada. And, Metallica has a well-known history with the passion of the Mexico City fans. I would love to go to Mexico City to see Metallica. Like when I think about a destination place to see Metallica, other than maybe like a Bay Area type thing, it would be like Mexico City, just because I feel like there's so much love there. There's so much energy. I feel like they play great shows there. So that's what they did in July. In August, they played the Outside Lands Festival in San Francisco. It headlined it. Very cool. Bit nice paycheck. In September, the Deep Purple tribute to their album Machine Head called Remachined came out with one of my favorite Metallica covers, When a Blind Man Cries. Love that. In October, they replaced Green Day last minute for a Voodoo Festival. Because I believe this is when Billy Joe Armstrong flipped out at the iHeartRadio Festival and ended up going to rehab. Now, here's the interesting thing that happened, and this is the last thing, but this is the thing that probably had the most impact. I mean, I know they lost millions of dollars on the festival, and then they would go on to lose more millions on the festival, and then $30 million on their movie. But in terms of, in fact, making all that back up, is they started Blackened Recordings, okay? So here is the article. Metallica launched their own Blackened Recordings. This is from The Guardian, I believe. Yep, The Guardian. Metal giants leave Warner Music after 28 years, saying their decision to go it alone is, quote-unquote, the ultimate in independence. Metallica have left their longtime record label, taking control of their back catalog. After decades with Warner Music, the metal band announced that they are to launch their own label, Blackened Recordings. It's always been about control for us as a band, drummer Lars Ulrich said. Metallica appear to have acted on a clause of their joint venture agreement signed with Warner in 1994 that allows them to reclaim their own material. As of November 30th, 2012, Metallica owned the rights to their master recordings, including the group's complete discography and all long-form videos. Frontman James Hetfield thanked Warner for a fantastic relationship, but the band seemed optimistic about going it alone. Forming Blackened Recordings is the ultimate in independence, Ulrich said, giving us 100% control and putting us in the driver's seat of our own creative destiny. Soon, every Metallica release from Kill 'Em All to Death Magnetic will be stamped with the Blackened Recordings logo. The imprint will also oversee Metallica's marketing and promotion, as well as anything else that suits them. Their first independent release will be a concert DVD, Quebec Magnetic, which we all know and love. Due on Monday, the live set captures the band's performances in Quebec City on October 31st and November 1st, 2009. So, really what was going on, I mean, people maybe don't understand this. So, owning your masters means you own the recording, the actual recording of Master of Puppets. And that when you own your own masters, that means that you get to decide how they're licensed. If Stranger Things wants to use it in their show, you get to decide that, not a label, not a corporation that just wants to make money. Because let's say it's a show that, let's say the show Survivor or whatever the fuck, just some show that no one in the band liked, wanted to use whatever, under Warner, they might have been able to just license their music to anything. They might have been able to license their music to a fucking sock company. The sock master of puppets. Not to mention, you don't control what your music's being used to sell, but you also don't get all the revenue because you don't own the masters. So it just means that you have control over what happens with the music, and you also get 100% of the money. Okay, now that's why we start to see all of these reissues after 2012, right? So they're putting out new stuff, Quebec Magnetic, all of the records, Hardwired, 72 Seasons, S&M 2, the All Within My Hands live release that came out, The House of Vans. These are all new recordings that are under, Blackened Recordings. But you also see reissue of Garage Days Revisited. We see, of course, all the box sets, but they reissued the entire catalog on vinyl. You see, starting in 2015 with the No Life Till Leather cassette tape, which we know now was going to be itself an entire box set. 2016, you see Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning. So you just start to see, and plus they're so smart. They've always had such smart people around them and stuff, but they also bought their own record pressing plant. So they're able to just be completely in charge of how they make money off of their back catalog. It's just brilliant. They did the Black Album stuff with the Black List, where they basically got every major artist in the world that was at least willing to do it to continue propelling, the name of Metallica into the culture. So the implications of that are huge. From what I've read about it, they sued to get out of their contract with Warner after the Black Album, basically saying, like, look, we've made everyone a ton of money. We want out of this deal. We want to own our shit. They wanted to own it as soon as then. Warner, I think, brilliantly negotiates a deal where they go, look, you're right. We'll give it all to you. Now, this is in 1994, okay? Very difficult probably to have predicted what has happened to music starting in the early aughts. But they said, we'll give it back to you in 20 years. And 20 years just seems like forever when you're young. But that 20 years came and went. Metallica's the arbiters of their own creative destiny now in 2012. But the music industry, in terms of an industry that makes the kind of money that they were used to making, by this point is completely over. Completely decimated. Warner made all their money, and they got out right at a time when it's becoming impossible, and now it is impossible to make any money off of recorded music. It's like the difference is so stark. It's just hard to describe. It's hard to describe the amount of money you could make if you sold even 1 million physical copies of an album in 1994. Which it doesn't happen anymore. It's over. So I find all that very interesting. Now, the world will continue to change. And the thing about owning your masters is you own them digitally, physically, streaming. As the landscape changes, as the economy changes and evolves, and this is me being very generous and unusually optimistic, there might be a new way. Let's say there's a new way in 18 months to a new economy of a way to make money off of recorded music that we can't even foresee yet. In 1994, you probably couldn't foresee streaming. You might have been able to foresee file sharing, but maybe not streaming, where you go, oh, well, everyone will pay $10 a month for every bit of recorded music. And then through some sort of vague, shadowy process, we'll just assume these corporations are fairly meting out exactly who to pay how much. No, our generous overlords at Spotify, who continue to fight to pay artists less while they give themselves $100 million bonuses, they'll do the right thing. They want to take care of the artists. And of course, now they're going, you know what? You artists are such pains in the ass, and we've been dealing with you and being sued by you and raising stinks about us, that we're just going to have AI make all the music now. We're going to, flood all the algorithms and playlists with our own AI generated bullshit. And then you guys can go kick rocks. And it's like, well, all right, fuck you guys. We will. Anyway, that's a whole rant that we don't have to get on. But what's going to start happening is people are going to start saying, we made a thing over here and there's no AI involved. And then people are going to go, I want to spend my money on that. I don't want this bullshit. I think that is happening. And I would encourage you out there to do it. Don't hit me with the, I listened to this thing and it was AI, but it's really cool. Don't hit me with that shit. If you're doing it, fine. Don't bug me with that. I'm not into it at all. I think that you should, I think that everyone should stand up against it, in my opinion. And I know I don't want anything to do with it, but maybe there will be a new way to make money. And if it is the case, Metallica will own their masters. They'll be able to decide what happens with their music and they'll be able to make money off of it. And good for them. I think that's great. Anytime an artist can own their work, is a victory for creatives everywhere. So that's 2012. Thanks for hanging with the episode. Thanks for watching on YouTube if that's what you're doing. We are going to go now and watch the entire Ride the Lightning set from 2012 Orion Festival. So you can join us on Patreon if you want to see that. And if not, I'll see you next week. Take care of yourself. Take care of your families. Peace.